Hello and welcome back to Year 9 English. It's great to have you here again. This is Week 1, Session 2, Words and Context. Last session you learned to infer and to prove it with precise evidence. Today we zoom in even further, right down to the single word. Because here's the thing. Two words can point at the very same object and do completely different work on you. Slender and thin. Compact and cramped. Same object, different feeling. By the end of this session, you'll be able to explain exactly how a writer does that to a reader and prove it. Let's begin. 4 goals today. First, define connotation and separate it cleanly from denotation. Second, use morphology, that's prefixes, roots, and suffixes, as a second route into a word's meaning. Third, identify a genuine semantic field and explain the pattern it builds. And fourth, keep testing your reading against a credible alternative exactly as you did last session. Let's build this carefully. Let's get the terms exactly right. Denotation is a word's direct, literal dictionary meaning. Connotation is different. Connotation is the ideas, feelings, and associations suggested by a word beyond that direct meaning. Take slender and thin. Both denote a similar physical quality, but slender carries approval, elegance. Thin is flatter and can tilt towards frailty. The denotation barely moves, the connotation moves you, and that gives us our first misconception to kill. A dictionary definition does not explain every effect of a word. The dictionary gives you denotation. Only context and connotation tell you how the word is actually working in this sentence, in this passage. Now, morphology is your second route in. Words are built from morphemes, the smallest meaningful units, prefixes, roots, suffixes. The prefix un commonly signals negation. The suffix less signals absence. But here's the discipline. Neither morphology nor context is infallible on its own. Together, they support a reliable inference. Vocabulary is not swapping short words for longer ones. It's asking what a word denotes, what it connotes, how it's built, and why it suits this exact context. Here's our passage. It's called The Closed Gallery, written specially for this course. Read it with me. The museum's West Gallery had been unlit for 6 months. Even at noon, the windows admitted a colorless wash that left the portraits looking faintly erased. Nadiya stood beneath the sign marked Restoration in Progress and listened. Somewhere beyond the locked door, a brush scraped once, paused, then scraped again. "No one is working in there," the guard said. His smile was polite, but his hand remained on the radio clipped to his jacket. "The room is uninhabitable until the plaster dries." Nadiya looked at the narrow line of dust beneath the door. It had been divided by 3 fresh footprints. 1 pointed into the gallery, 2 pointed out. The guard shifted so that his polished shoe covered the marks. "The east wing is much more interesting," he said. First reading. Literal meaning before interpretation always. What is claimed? The guard says no one is working in there. What do we hear? A brush scraping beyond the locked door. What do we see? 3 fresh footprints in the dust, 1 in, 2 out. And what does the guard do? He covers them with his shoe. Now that word, uninhabitable. Use both routes. Context first. The plaster is wet, so the room isn't fit for people yet. Now, morphology, un, plus inhabit, plus able. Not able to be inhabited. Both roots land in the same place. Uninhabitable means not suitable or safe to live in. Not invisible from the entrance, not valuable, not instantly repairable. So the main idea of this passage is this. Nadiya notices evidence that contradicts the guard's claim that the closed gallery is empty. Notice the arithmetic she's doing. 1 footprint in, 2 out. Someone is unaccounted for. Now infer. Here's a defensible one. The guard knows that someone has recently entered the gallery and he is trying to redirect Nadiya. Now, which evidence proves it? Watch how I choose. The passage offers plenty. A colorless wash, looking faintly erased. The east wing is much more interesting. All real, all in the text. But the decisive evidence is this. His polished shoe covered the marks. Why that one? Because it's the only detail where the guard acts against the evidence. Describing dim light tells you about the room. Recommending the east wing might just be helpfulness, but covering the footprints is a deliberate response to the very thing that contradicts him. That's not atmosphere. That's behavior. And remember the rule from last session. The strongest evidence is the most relevant and the most precise, never simply the longest. Now, language and this session's key method. Look at these words: colorless, erased, dust, individually, unremarkable. Together, they build a pattern, and a pattern of connected meaning is called a semantic field. This one is a field of fading and absence. So, second misconception, gone. A semantic field is not just any two words on one topic. It's a sustained pattern whose effect you can actually explain. So, explain it. The repeated vocabulary of fading and absence makes the gallery feel secretive and suggests that information is being concealed. And look what the writer does next. That language of absence stops being description and becomes an action when the guard's shoe covers the marks. The theme of things being erased is no longer in the light, it's in a person. That's what turns a pattern into an argument. 3 connected judgments: tone, uneasy, and suspicious. Justified by a pattern, not one adjective. A polite smile, but a hand that stays on the radio. A firm denial, contradicted by a sound. Fresh footprints quietly covered. Structure. The passage moves from an apparently empty setting to audible evidence, then to visible footprints, and finally to an act of concealment. Notice the escalation. Each step is harder to explain away than the last, and the final step is the guard responding. And purpose. To show how precise word choice and small physical clues can turn an ordinary setting into a mystery. Nothing dramatic happens here. No alarm, no chase, just adjectives and footprints doing the work. Now the move that makes you a confident reader. Test your claim against an alternative. I said the guard is concealing something. But here's another reading. The guard may simply be following a safety procedure. Wet plaster, a closed room, a member of the public. Keeping her out could just be his job. And the radio is standard equipment. That's fair. And it sits on real evidence. But notice, I can rank these readings. Covering the footprints makes the innocent reading less secure because safety procedure explains keeping her out. It doesn't explain hiding the marks. Both readings are defensible. They are not equally supported, and saying so precisely is what a strong response does. Here it is in writing. The thesis. The writer makes the gallery seem deliberately erased from public view, using a semantic field of absence before revealing physical evidence that someone has been inside. Then the paragraph proves it. The adjective colorless does more than describe weak light. It joins the field of erasure, reinforced when the portraits appear faintly erased and dust gathers beneath the door. Then, when the guard's shoe covered the marks, the language of absence becomes an action. Evidence is literally hidden, and that shift encourages the reader to distrust his polite explanation. Claim, evidence, reasoning, check. Let's build a word from its parts, because morphology is a skill you can use on any unfamiliar word in any exam. Take uninhabitable. Strip it down. The root is inhabit, a verb, meaning to live in. Add the suffix, able, and you get inhabitable, an adjective meaning able to be lived in. Now add the prefix un, and it negates that adjective, uninhabitable, not suitable to live in. Notice 2 things. The suffix changed the word class verb to adjective. The prefix changed the meaning to its opposite. And here's the third misconception, gone. Not every word with the same root shares a meaning. Affixes and historical development shift both meaning and word class. Careful though, the prefix in does not mean inside here, and able is not a past tense, and that ending is not the word table. Analyze the real morphemes, then check the sentence around them. Now, combining sentences. The smile was polite. The guard kept his hand on the radio. Nadiya remained cautious. 3 flat statements. Combine them precisely. Although the guard's smile was polite, his hand remained on the radio, so Nadiya stayed cautious. The subordinating conjunction although shows concession. The coordinating conjunction so shows consequence. The grammar is now doing the thinking. Let's check your understanding. Here's a new passage. The advertisement called the room compact. Layla could touch both walls without moving from the doorway, and the only window opened onto a brick shaft. What does the word compact mainly do here? Pause and think. Here it is. It gives a positive connotation to a room that may actually feel cramped. The denotation of compact is small and efficiently arranged. That's neutral, even flattering. But the context, 2 walls within arm's reach, a window-facing brick, tells you the advertiser is softening an unattractive feature. Compact isn't a lie. It's a choice. It doesn't prove the room is unsafe, it doesn't mean expensive furniture, and it certainly doesn't fold up. So your recap. Denotation is the dictionary, connotation is the coloring, and only context reveals it. Morphology is your second route in prefix, root, suffix. A semantic field is a sustained pattern, not any 2 related words, and you must explain its effect. The best evidence is the detail where someone acts. And always rank your alternative honestly. When you speak about this passage, present both readings, the guard as professional reassurance and the guard as deliberate redirection, and then rank them by evidence. That's real analysis. You did really well today. Noticing how a single word positions a reader is a genuinely sophisticated skill, and you've just learned it. Now go and make it stick. Head to bridgetoexam.com where you can practice connotation and vocabulary questions with instant feedback and take the final exam when you're ready. Every question you answer there sharpens your ear for language. I'm proud of your effort, and I'll see you next session where we look at imagery, figurative language, and tone.